What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Tell Me More podcast presented by the Real Estate Cheat Code. I have my good friend with me, Andrew Robinson from Real Broker. Andrew, thanks so much for taking time out of your day to join me on my podcast and to share your real estate journey.
It's absolute pleasure. I don't know exactly when we met, but I know I've known Ryan for all of 10 years. I don't know if you were back in the mix 10 years ago. So it's sometimes we've been in the game for so long we forget when we originally met, but I'm sure it was related to I was at Cutler at the time.
Yep.
I think you guys were there at the same time. So that's like 10 years ago.
The story that I always say about you, I was with Ryan. I've been with Ryan my whole career, 13 years. And when you came to Cutler, we were at Cutler, and I always just remember you telling me when you got into the business, you just stalked and door knocked the heck out of expireds and for sale by owners, and people were like, man, what's it take to get into the luxury market and things like that? And I was like, well, there was this agent back at Cutler. His name's Andrew Robinson. And this is what he did. I wouldn't do that, but he did it. Right. And that's how he got his foot in the door. And I'm sure we can talk about that, right, when we get to that point. But I wanted, on the Tell Me More podcast, we always start with growing up. What was childhood like? Are you from Columbus? Did you have any hobbies, interests? Did you go to college? Fill me in on the early days.
Sure. I grew up in the Middletown area, and which people that are familiar with our new Vice President, J.D. Vance, he grew up in Middletown. And it's funny, people talk about that being Appalachia. And then you have some people looking at the map. They're like, that's not Appalachia. Well, I lived in Middletown, Ohio, and Middletown was a steel town. So what we had this blend of people that came out of Appalachia to get jobs in the steel mill. So I really grew up in an environment that was that blue collar work ethic that we had in that small town. So I moved there probably when I was in second or third grade, and I graduated from high school there, and was involved in multiple different types of sports. Soccer was probably the one that I enjoyed the most. And then the other thing that was probably really important back in that time of my life was we had a very, very active theater department. So we typically did 5 or 6 shows every single year. So it was very, very intensive into that. The arts was very important for me. And then when I went away to college, my first year, I actually was on a scholarship. I went to Wright State University, and I wanted to be involved in the theater program. But I think I learned very quick that I really wanted a little bit more stability, and I didn't want to have that unknown of, hey, I'm going to have to travel to New York. I didn't want to be living with what's going to happen 12 weeks from now. So it's funny. It's funny as a realtor, where I was like, okay, I wonder what's going to happen 12 minutes from now. Waiting. Yeah. You take the initiative to make your phone ring, but some people are like waiting for the phone ring. That's not me, but some people in this industry are waiting for the phone to ring.
Yeah. It's funny you brought up Middletown and Appalachia, and same thought, right? I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense. So fill me in, take me down your career path, your journey, all the way up to the point of I want to get my real estate license.
Gotcha. Well, I'm actually going to jump into a little bit before that. When I was growing up, my grandfather was an attorney, but he also owned a lot of rental property. So when I would go visit my grandfather for the summertime, and I would stay at my grandma and grandpa's house for a week, I basically became free labor for my grandfather. So we would go down to his apartments they lived here in Columbus. So we would go down to his apartments on High Street, and he would drop me off with like a brush. It's just straight old paint. And I'm sure that it was probably lead paint at the time.
Yeah.
I'd have, so my summer times was frequently going to work on my grandfather's apartment. So I grew up in this environment knowing that, it was always important to have this. Even though he's an attorney, he had this secondary form of income that was coming in. So when I originally moved to Columbus, one of the first things I wanted to do was buy a rental property. And I think the first property that, I was not involved in real estate, but this was just, I was, working, and the first home that I bought was a duplex, so that my wife and I could live in one side and the other side could be generating income.
Yeah.
So that was way before I ever got involved in real estate.
Did you always have that? Was that your first? Was the real estate interest that's what piqued it in the beginning, or was it just the idea of investing?
It was probably the idea of investing. Just I was as a child, I was taught to, if you want something, you have to have a job and you have to save for it. I didn't grow up in an environment where we were just given things. So if I wanted new baseball cleats to play, I had to cut the grass every week. I had to, do all these chores to make the money to be more self-sufficient. Luckily, I live in an environment now where we probably give too much to our children without making them earn it. But we're lucky to be in a position to do that sometimes.
Yeah. So you move to Columbus, you get the duplex, right? You're kind of working down that path. Take me down the career field, the career journey.
Right. So right out of college, anybody that lives in Columbus, you have to have lived here for a while. But back in the day, when I was in college, there was a company called Nationwide Warehouse, and it was a furniture store. In today's world, we would recognize that more as American Freight, because they came from the same family that built both of those companies. So after I graduated and by the way, when I was in college, I also continued in that venue of being in the theater. I traveled around the country. I was in the Texas Renaissance Festival and worked in that for 2 years. Came back to Columbus. I'm like, I just don't really want to be in that field. I want to be in a more professional field. I wrapped up college in August. So you kind of miss that job interview process when you're in college. I graduated with a marketing degree in business, but I missed that interview process. So I'm like, I'm just going to take a job that's not that important, that's not that committed. That way I can go back and move into a different profession. So I answered an ad about inside sales in a furniture store. And that was right here in Columbus, Ohio. It was called Nationwide Warehouse. I got the job. Of course, if you could fog up a mirror, you could get a job selling at a furniture store. And I wasn't there very long, and the owner came in and he said, "Hey, we're having some issues at our store in Boston, Massachusetts. I'd like to send you out there for the weekend to help with the sales and kind of if you can give me an idea of what's going on in the store." I had a fantastic week. I was really excited to come back, and he's like, I come back and the guy goes, "So did you find a place to live?" I'm like, I thought this was just a temporary thing. He goes, "Oh no, we want you to move there." So I moved to Boston. Quickly, I think I was like 22 years old at the time, became the manager of that store and really cut my teeth on retail sales, store management. So it's like we had to learn really quickly. But as the store manager, my own production, it's very similar to real estate. My own production was a certain percentage of my income, but also I was getting paid off of every single person that was in the store.
Yeah.
So if I was selfish and I just focused on my own education, I would have left all those other people behind. So I really always wanted to make it a very collaborative effort where we're making everybody in the store better. And that got me to a position where they were opening up the West Coast. So I got moved quickly to Seattle. And part of what my job was not only to train salespeople, but to build a vertically integrated supply chain, because we were bringing product from all over into Boston, into Detroit. We had stores in Denver. And when I went to Seattle, part of that was to not only train the salespeople open the stores, but to build out that supply chain. Yeah. So that became, and I'll just, you feel free to, if you have a question to stop me, but I'll just talk quickly. Yeah. They brought me back to Columbus to be in charge of the product development and sales training for the entire United States and Canadian operations. So I
Mm.
spent a tremendous amount of time. I would say that during my 7 or 8 years there, by the time I got into that level, I was traveling about 100 to 120 days a year. And that story will come back to be this. My next move was, one of my friends was an attorney at Big Lots, and Big Lots at the time had a bunch of hanging apparel. They didn't have furniture the way you know it today.
Yeah.
We kind of hatched this idea that we could take some of their underutilized real estate. Like they'd have a big Kmart store. Half of the store wasn't being utilized, but they were paying the rent. So we were like, hey, why don't we turn that underutilized real estate into a furniture division within this bigger parent company? And so we left the Nationwide Warehouse, and we undertook that. And my business partner and I grew that to about a $500 million division.
Wow.
And we opened stores all over the United States. But I never escaped from that working and traveling and being 100 days on the road. I would go to Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, China, and I would typically be over there for 18 days at a time. And there just got to be I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I came back here, and I actually ended up opening my own retail stores, same venue, furniture, mattresses, things like that. We opened the stores. I was no longer at Big Lots. I was self-employed. We had stores in Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Tennessee. And we also had an import-export business too, and we sold things on the internet mostly with eBay, but I was bringing in pool tables, poker tables, and home theater seating and selling them. So I know that's a weird collage of things to be doing, but I always felt myself as a merchant. So identifying products and figuring out how to take them to market. So when I transitioned, and I'm like, hey, I'm just tired of, I had 168 employees. I had all of these 14 leases that I had to pay. So you struggle all month long to get everybody else paid. And then as a business owner, you're lucky if, the 28th, 29th, and 30th, you're making money for yourself.
Yeah.
So about 10 years ago, I'm like, I'm just done being responsible for 160 people. Yeah. So that's when I transitioned into real estate. I know a long story, but it's like everyone has a story about very few people come out of college or 22 years old and say, I'm going to be a realtor.
And that's why I love having these conversations, right? It's because I'm passionate about helping new people get into the business. And I think a lot of times when people get in, they think they have to do it a certain way or have to come from a certain background or have to have certain experience and all of those things. I was the 22-year-old that got in right out of college, right? But the majority of people, right, it's their second, third, fourth, fifth career choice or along their journey of life. And I always love hearing the backstories because there's usually a decision, a person in their life or, experiences that they had that has a huge impact on their real estate story, right. the real estate agent portion of it. Right. And so I was curious, as you were talking about, the growth of those companies, I know that there have been things that have transitioned from your previous career into your real estate that you have utilized. I mean, retail sales, right? Like, I'm curious, right. what have you kept in your real estate environment that you had back then? Is it the face-to-face of reading people, right? Is it going through a sales presentation? I'm curious if there's a couple of things that stick out to you that you're still utilizing to this day, but in the real estate format.
There's two things specifically. One, because of being a merchant, not only did we identify product and bring it to market, then we had to create advertising around it. So when I got involved in real estate 10 years ago, I just thought a lot of people just stuck a sign in the yard and they're like, oh, here we go. But I remember 10 years ago, I was using drones to fly over my properties and video when it was now everybody's doing it. Yeah. But 10 years ago, it was like an invest. I think the first drone expense was maybe $500 for a drone video, and now you could probably get a drone video for $100.
Right.
But and then the other thing was I worked in an environment where there would be multiple people in the store, and you had to learn how to engage multiple people at the same time, and yet give them attention
Mm.
and ask for permission to say, hey, John, do you mind if I take just a minute to check in with these folks over here? So by asking permission, now you're going to come back and chat with them. So it's learning. And for me, the other thing that I did a lot early on, and I continue to do, is I did a lot of open houses on high-end inventory. So, and I don't think a lot of the team leads were doing that. They typically said the people that are going to do the open houses are the newbies. But I thought this is a great opportunity for me to meet people who are many times ready, willing, and able to buy a house, or at least they're forming the idea that something's going to happen in the next 12 to 24 months. And I think probably something that some agents do is they give up. They're like, if they identify that that person's not going to transact in the next 30 days, they just kind of like mentally shut down. And I just go for the questioning. Well, tell me, what was it that brought you in today? What's going on in your life? What are you tell me about the house that you tell me why, tell me more. It's just like the name of your podcast. You get them to tell you more, and that gives you actionable things to follow up with them in the future. So
yeah. What's one thing that you took away from managing that many people?
Well, everybody has something going on in their life that you don't always know what it is that's going on in their life. And, you know, their performance may be stellar for a long period of time, and then it could just fall apart because they're having some interpersonal relationships and emotional crisis. And I think that you have to learn to be empathetic to people. And this is the true, not just of the people that are within your team, but when you're talking to prospective clients or active clients, you know, they are human beings. And here's the thing I learned: they don't really care about me. They don't really care about you specifically. They care mostly about themselves. So if you can ask questions that reveal more about themselves, and you can express an interest in their lives, you'll get a lot further. And that's true as if they're your team members or if they're your prospects.
Yeah. I'm curious, what, you mentioned the experience of bringing product to the market. What do you think agents are missing right now when they bring a product, AKA, a new listing to the market? You mentioned video early on, right? What do you think now that maybe you have identified that agents are lacking or not doing?
Some agents do this, but I think that it's every house, typically, but particularly in luxury properties, it's not so much when you're in a $399 house that's very similar to everything in the neighborhood. But every house typically has something that stands out as being really awesome. One of my recent listings had like a $400,000 pool in the backyard. So what I really wanted to do is I wanted to take people immediately into the backyard. Yeah. So the primary photograph was not the front elevation of the house. And I think that when we're so accustomed to looking online and swiping, you want to stop with what really makes that house desirable or sets it apart from the neighbors. If it's the great room, if it's an amazing fireplace, if it's a kitchen, or if it sits on a lake and you can pull that in, make that be the first image. And also with your video, I recently did a video where I didn't start at the front door like everybody does. I said, hey, this kitchen is amazing, and I want to start in the kitchen because you're going to fall in love with it. So to dissect what it is that's going to really stand out to consumers about that product.
I think that's fantastic. And I think that also is a sales.
I lost audio.
I think that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a good sales tactic as well as you're walking through the home with a client, right? Where are you having that last conversation? is it in that room or that feature of the house that really stands out, that has that wow factor to it, right? Or are you always having it on the front driveway, right? Like, put them in that environment or that room that has originally gravitated them to want to look at that property, or that stands out with that property. And I think that's an important, because you're going to put them in there and they're going to actually start visualizing, especially if you're talking about writing an offer, right? They're going to see themselves in that room as you're talking about, okay, well, what do we want to offer? What terms, right? All of those things. So I think that's spot on. And I don't see many agents doing it that way like you have done it, right? It's always been pretty standard of front photo of the house, not necessarily the video starting in the kitchen, right?
Right.
I've never done that, right? So now I'm going to start thinking differently about it.
Well, there's a lot of agents that's raising the bar, and I don't know if Tara Shoaf has been on your show or not, but she's really investing heavily in storytelling, and she's using Timothy at Orange Visuals, and they do some fantastic work. And I think that's another thing that we as professionals have to do, is we have to raise the bar within our own brokerage and within our own sphere of people that we work with, to demand higher quality stuff going out that makes us all look like professionals, rather than there's nothing that makes me cringe more than cell phone photographs on an MLS listing. It's just crazy.
Well, Andrew, let's pivot into the real estate career. Obviously, through the journey of, it sounds like part of the reason why you wanted to get into real estate was because of just the time away from home, right? The travel, when you made the decision, why real estate, why get into real estate? Did people think you were crazy? Did they support you? Did they have doubters? Where did, because you're leaving, this corporate, career to go into 100% commission-based, industry. And at the time, 2000, I think you said 2014, right. It was better than 08, but it wasn't 2019. It wasn't 2021 type real estate market. Right. It was coming up. So I'm just curious of, did you have supporters, doubters, people think that you're crazy? Where did kind of your inner circle fall?
I had spent 25, 30 years of my career in an industry, the furniture industry. And just like we have 9,000 agents in Central Ohio, and the names of 200 or 300 that are at the top. Well, within the industry, because of I had notoriety, because people knew when you would go to the markets, people knew who you were. And when I said, hey, I'm going to be moving in this direction, they're like, what? They're like, hey, a friend of mine owns this store in Cincinnati. He's looking for a general manager. You could go do that. And I'm like, you don't seem to understand. I don't want to be defined by what I've always done. Just because it's what you've always done, that's not a limitation. You could certainly move or pivot into a different direction, use the skill sets that you've got to be successful in a different career. And while I was in the furniture industry, I met two guys that were in the real estate industry, and both of them, I don't know if you know them or not. One is Josh Shanley, and he lives in Allentown, PA, and he's been a realtor for a long time, but he's one of these guys that he's somewhat like you in terms of having a podcast. He's always investing in people, giving information. And his partner at the time was Ryan Hartman. And they were in that industry. I was in the furniture industry, but what I liked about them is the way that they marketed. And they became good friends of mine. They weren't really mentors of mine, but they were people that I'm like, these guys are really doing a cool thing over here, and I want to do what they're doing. And I actually drove. I didn't have my license. I drove all the way to Allentown, PA, or maybe York, PA. I don't remember. So I could go to one of their 2-day seminars about real estate, and I didn't even have a license yet. But I'm like, this is really cool, and they continue to be my good friends to this day. The other thing that was really important to me is when I owned my own company, I had a $2 million line of credit for all my inventory. And I ended up with some situations with the bank really pressuring me on that line of credit. And I'm like, you know what, my next business, I want to have a $20 million business, but I don't want to have a $2 million line of credit. And where can you do that? The best way to do that is in the real estate, because we can have a $20 million run rate a year with virtually no inventory. It's not our inventory.
Right.
So that was another thing that I wanted to do.
Yeah. Dive into the first, couple years. How did you think about building your business? Obviously, it's a new territory for you. You have the skills as far as the background goes, maybe even the connections, right, of people. But specifically, how did you think about building your real estate business?
Oh, one, at the time, Facebook advertising was much easier than it is today because you could target very specifically income demographics, and you could target age demographics. And what I said to myself is, I want to probably go after 50 and 50, not necessarily 65 and older, but I want to go after the downsizing person because for multiple reasons. Go where the money is. Those people have the money, they have the real estate, and it's going to be 2 transactions. If you come into the industry and you say, I want to focus on the first time home buyer, and for the sake of argument, let's say that's a $300,000 buyer. Well, I do just as much work to handle someone that lives in $1 million home that's potentially downsizing to a $600,000 home. The conversations with that client are going to generate $1.6 million in transaction value, and their sphere of influence about who they can refer you to is so much greater. Because if you do a good job in that neighborhood, they're going to refer you to some of their friends.
Right.
So the value of that client, the lifetime value of that client is very high. And not to diminish the lifetime value of a first-time home buyer, but they're gonna take a lot longer to get you to that. So that's why people were like, why did you go right for luxury? I mean, that must have been where you're comfortable. I'm like, go where the money is. It's like, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is.
Andrew's not telling you to go do that.
Yeah, of course.
But Andrew, I guess, is the story that I shared at the very beginning about you kind of sitting out in front of for sale by owners or, the expired listings waiting for the seller to come home. Is that true or no?
It's no, not really. That sounds kind of creepy, but I did identify some expired listings that I really wanted. Some expired listings you want just because you need the revenue.
Sure.
Others you're like, hey, I can help build my business around this. So one of my first clients 10 years ago, his house was, let's say it was $385,000, and it was on Clarkshaw, and he lived at the end. I had mailed him some stuff, but I had never spoken to him on the phone. And I just went walking down his driveway, and 3 big dogs came right up, they barking and barking and barking. And I'm like waving at him, like, hi. And he goes, hey, how can I help you? I said, I just have one question. Do these dogs bite? And he laughed, and he's like, what did you need? Well, he invited me to come to the back patio. We started chatting, and that was the beginning of a very long relationship. And I believe now I'm currently involved in my 6th transaction because he was an executive at a company and had ownership in the company, and the company just kept doing better and better. So he moved up and up and up. And I think he currently lives in probably a $1.6 million house. And I've been with them through that whole journey. And how did I get there? Walking down a driveway for someone that I didn't know. But I'm going to segue. I'm going to take the same story, but I'm going to shift it to a piece of inventory that I really, really wanted. And that was on the 18th green of Muirfield, behind the clubhouse, was an expired listing that had been on and off the market and had not sold. And the owner didn't even live in the house. Well, I found out where he lived, and I knew he was an executive at a pretty big company, and it would be impossible to call him at work. And I didn't really want to, I was brave enough to go knock on his door, but I actually went at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't think I'd actually run into him. I thought I would run into his wife. And I'm like, I wanted to use that conversation with her to open the door to a conversation with her husband. And that's what I did. I knocked on the door, and I said, I said, "Hey, is Sam home?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm sorry you just missed him. He was at work." I said, "Well, I'm working on this project on a couple of those properties up on the golf course, and I couldn't help but notice that you and Sam had a house that had expired. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to ask you a couple questions about that because I think it'll help me with my overall report." So as you can see, I was almost using like a third party. I
Yeah.
want information about your property to help me, and that ended up being my first really luxury listing. It was about a $750,000 listing. I did a lot of open houses there, but I used that to get, it's like they always say level up. Use
Hmm.
this as a stepping stone to get the next one. So I'm sitting there, and a blue jacket comes in and he comes to the open house and he goes, "Hey, I'd really like to live on the golf course, but I don't like this house. I would really like it if you would find me another one." I don't know if he had an agent or not. I used that as permission to go
Yeah.
out and knock on some more doors. And here's the crazy thing. Um, I didn't go knocking on doors. I went and looking for contractors who were fixing houses in the neighborhood. So I saw a guy that was building a deck and I walked around and I chatted with him and I said, "Hey, you didn't happen to work on anybody's house in the last 12 months that said they were fixing it up because they were thinking about putting it on the market?" He goes, "As a matter of fact, I did." And he shared that information, that address with me. I drove by the house, got the picture of the front of the house, and I went home, researched who they were, how long they lived there, and I wrote them. I'd love to share it with you sometime, but I wrote one of those yellow letters that says,
Yeah.
"Hey, Pam, and I have been working with a blue jacket that wants a house on the golf course like yours, with a pool like yours, with a great front impression, elevation, whatever, like yours. I have no idea if you'd be interested in possibly entertaining the idea of selling your house, but if you would, I think it would be a great opportunity to possibly even sell off market and never even have to have someone traipse to your house." And that was my first $1 million listing. So
There you go. There you go. I mean, that's why I love having, agents on. I mean, because I've never door knocked a day in my life, right? I've never walked down a driveway a day in my life, right? And, for those people, everyone's always like, I want to get into luxury. I want to get into luxury. And that is for some people, right?
right.
But are you willing to do the things that it takes in order to get into luxury? And I think you said something key that I hope the audience caught. The property or the opportunity should be the stepping stone, right? This should not
Right.
just be a one and done, right? How can I leverage this opportunity, this property, this situation to turn it into 2 or 3 or more transactions, right? And I think that's part of this story is, right, one thing springboarded to the next, which then springboarded to the next, right? But you are just willing to do it a way that most agents are so afraid to do it. No one's to walking down someone's driveway. No one's door knocking, right? The handwritten note, right? The yellow letter, right? We're seeing a little bit more of that now because we're trying to find that off market opportunity. But, back then, I mean, inventory wasn't our problem.
Right.
And so you're still looking for that property that the client needed or that the client wanted.
So like full circle, I just closed a deal I closed a deal 2 or 3 days ago that was in Woodland Hall, and I have a listing in Woodland Hall that's $1.8 million. So there are about 140 houses in that neighborhood. So what I did is I met someone at one of the open houses that's unrepresented, and they loved the neighborhood. So I went back to that strategy. I wrote a letter. I said, "Hey, I wrote the success story of we successfully marketed and sold your neighbor's house. It created demand. We have more demand than we do have supply. If you've been thinking about selling, this would be a great opportunity to explore the possibility of selling off market, no sign in your yard, no prep. My clients will buy it as is." And what you have to do is when you write that letter, you have to write it from the perspective of the anxiety of the seller. You have to you can't just talk about the opportunity that you've got a buyer, because they're like, "I don't care if you got a buyer. I don't want to sell my house." So
Yeah.
you have to find the hot button and say, if you've been thinking about it, but you don't know what to do with all the stuff, you don't want to get everything prepped and ready to go. You don't want people having open houses at your house. So you're offering a solution that the other agent is not offering. So I wrote the letter and I sent it out in a handwritten envelope. I don't mail them myself. I use a company called Mailbox Power or Thanks.io. I use both of those companies, and they will generate what looks like a handwritten envelope.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like a handwritten letter because it's harder to read. Some people use that. And then that's another thing that I do too, is everybody that comes to my open house, I try to get a mailing address so I can mail them a thank you card for coming, so that they're just not getting an email of like, these are the houses that just got listed. It's actually something that physically shows up. So it separates you from the other open houses that they went to that day.
Yeah. I hope the audience caught that you kill it at the open house game at the high price point, right? Open houses aren't just for the $300,000, $400,000, and $5,000 houses. They are also for the million, $1.5, $2 million price range. And people are walking in unrepresented, right? And that's the crazy part. Right. Is that those opportunities are there as long as you keep showing up and putting yourself in those positions.
It's funny. Agents will say to their clients, well, open houses don't generate sales. And I will say to my client, I said, open houses generate sales in two ways. One, it creates a fear of loss. So if Jon Harp shows this property on Friday and I have an open house on Saturday, his clients are saying, John, he's having an open house tomorrow. Maybe we should get an offer in. So that creates fear of loss. But also, two, one of my highest priced listings ever, it was a $2 million listing. I was the second agent that took it. And I don't believe that the first agent it was a great agent, but I just don't think they had open houses at this particular property. And I did one of those 5 to 7 open houses, the drive time open houses, because you catch people that are not your typical Sunday. I'm going to go on Sunday and I'm going to look at all these properties.
Yeah.
So a veterinarian came into the property. He's looking around. He goes, oh, I think my wife would really like this. How long are you going to be here? And I said, where do you live now? And he told me. I said, go home and get her, bring her back. So they came back. They loved the property. He goes, well, we really like the property. We weren't in the market for a new property. We think we might want to buy this house. What's the next step? That was a double-sided $2 million listing. So that was the biggest paycheck I've ever had, and it came from an open house.
Did they sell the house they were living in?
Oh yeah, I forgot. I sold their house too. So it was like a triple paycheck.
Yeah.
And hey, that's another story too. That client, I am now currently involved in my 5th transaction with that client. So it was like
That's awesome.
$2 million. It was like if you take care of people and stay in contact with them, it just pays off so much over the lifetime. And I care about those people,
yeah.
but serve them, and it will have a great payday from that.
Yeah. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about kind of the future, kind of look what you're kind of currently doing, what you're looking to do in the future. What's something that you're trying to accomplish? What's a goal or something that you're trying to accomplish here in the next 12 months?
Couple things. I'm really investing more heavily in the amount of money that I spend in marketing around my existing properties, because I want to build more listing inventory. I think we're all going to face a little bit of a challenge with the change. We're going to survive, and it's going to be, but there are some people that are going to struggle. I want to be on the side that controls my own destiny by having more listing inventory.
Yeah.
So I'm focusing on that. But also, I sometimes turn down opportunities because they interfere not with my perception of the type of client that I want to service, but how much I value my time. So if I have an opportunity, someone says, hey, my son wants to go look at houses in a neighborhood where the average value is $300,000 or $400,000. I want to help that person, but I want to help them by introducing them to somebody that I have a partnership with,
Yeah.
either in the form of having a team or having them be within my brokerage. So that way we can all benefit together. So I want to build better relationships with agents that either they're on I don't currently have a team, but either I have a team or I have a relationship with people that handle that type of business, so that um, we all do better. You know, if
Yeah.
you if in your organization you guys have a team model, so you pour into your people, and your income is you help them, but you help yourself along the way too.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what's great about your company and my company, right? Real and EXP,
Right.
is that you can have this concept of having a team without having a
Mhm.
team,
Right.
right? You can have people that are, that you sponsor, that you mentor, but you're not, what's the right word? You're not, I don't want to say in charge, but you don't have to worry about them day in and day out as far as a production standpoint, as far as, are they doing what they're supposed to be doing, because you're spending X money, X dollars every single month for marketing or leads or, a
Right.
CRM or whatever the case may be. And so that's a great, opportunity for someone that, if they're looking to, I mean, think about it. If you're looking to get into the luxury world, why not follow Andrew? And help out and get those leads that, right, are maybe in that price point that, not that you don't want to serve, but there's better people out there for them, right, that can give them that service.
You said it the right way. It's not that I don't want to serve them. I want somebody that's hungry and can give them the amount of, if that
Yeah.
person has to be, if they have to write 4 offers on 4 different houses and see 16 different houses, that if I made the commitment to do that, it's going to detract from the
Hmm.
commitment that because on many of my luxury listings, I need to be present to show the property.
Yeah.
So if I need to be present to show the property, then it's limiting the amount of time that you as the co-sale selling
Yep.
agent are like, John, I'm sorry you can't come look at that property on Thursday afternoon because I'm showing a $275,000 condo.
Right.
That would be a negative for everybody involved.
Sure.
So I need to refer that to somebody that's going to dedicate the time that condo buyer deserves. It's not about
Sure.
me. It's about giving them the better level of service.
For sure.
Um,
For sure.
the other thing that I don't want to think about the word retirement, because I think people. I'm not going to stop working, but I want to change my commitment so that I'm not necessarily working 60 hours a week, but I'm still benefiting. And I think that your organization, my organization, have multiple different ways that you can make money. I joined a company 3.5 years ago that only had 1,400 agents, and since then we've grown to 20,000 agents, and we're a publicly traded company. So I got stock in that company, and I continue to get stock in that company that today is probably worth over $450,000. So that will become part of my future retirement. And then I know that you and Ryan have built a great rev share model, because as you attract people and you mentor people, they become part of your future income stream. So as long as they stay within your company, they could even leave your team,
Yeah.
but they still generate revenue. And for people outside of what we both know, and they think of it as like some pyramid scheme or something, I think of it as like a corporate referral program. You brought those people in and you continued to mentor them, and the company continues to pay a referral to you as long as they're within the organization and productive within the organization. I think that's a much better way to look at it, because if I refer a property to you and I say, hey, here's a property in Newark, Ohio, and I'm trusting you to sell it, that doesn't mean you and I are not going to have conversations about
Right.
what's going on with that property, the marketing of that property, the offers on that property. I'm going to continue to be invested in you and your success in that, even though I've referred it off to you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Andrew, what's a goal that you're looking to accomplish in the next 5 years?
It's probably a net worth goal. So it's a net worth driven from those different levels of income, so that I can comfortably provide for my children and my grandchildren. Because as a father of four and as a grandfather of four, there's always things that come up that you want the freedom to say, hey, you need a new car, here's a new car. You need help with college tuition, here's that. And it's not about me, it's about providing an opportunity for my children and my grandchildren through the wealth and the income that I built by being in this fantastic industry. Some of the people that we know are building out rental portfolios or Airbnb portfolios, and that's part of their income stream. And you and I are building income. I don't know if you do. I don't have any rental properties anymore. I had some in the past, I sold them, but I just want to build some additional streams of income to provide for my generational wealth, not just for me, but for my wife and the generation that comes after us.
What's a legacy goal for you?
I think I probably just went that far and shared that with you. Is one of the things about I'll mention rev share again because it's common for both of us.
Yeah.
Our company made a decision some time ago during COVID, when we actually unfortunately lost a couple of our people, that rev share within our organization is willable. So if I was to die, I can pass that on to my wife or my designated person. So it's like the work we do today can have a payoff in the future. So that's kind of a legacy goal for me, to build out that income.
And you and I, because we weren't the first people here in Columbus to come to EXP, but we were one of the first groups here in Columbus to come to EXP. Were you the first in Columbus for real?
I'm the first agent. I'm the first agent in Ohio.
There you go. Yeah. We've been in this world, for several years now, and you and I have always talked, especially at agent events and things like that. How agents. It's one of those things, and I just talked about this to Rhiannon last week, and it's one of the things with our companies that it's hard to explain because agents don't understand it. They don't understand the concept. They can't see the concept, right? It's like buyers walking into a house. They can't look past the bad paint and the terrible flooring, right? They can't envision what that house looks like. And I said, the hard part about what our companies have to face is I have to show you, and you have to be able to see it and feel it, right? And you and I have always talked about it, like, we don't beef, right? Sometimes the rev share brokerage is beef, right? Or rev share versus traditional or whatever beef. And it's like, me and you have always talked about, hey, the more people that come to the rev share model, whatever company it is, the better that it's going to be for all of us, because you see it and I see it of the benefits that agents actually get, right? Rev share models, the stock, and all of that's great. It doesn't happen though unless you actually sell real estate, which is what we're here to do, which is to sell real estate. These are the additional benefits.
Right.
But the additional benefits, why not get rewarded even more for the production that you're already doing? Like, that's my whole thing. Like, why not get even more out of the one thing that we're already doing? The majority of us are not just going to be the recruiters. Right? The majority of us are going to be people that are in the practice of real estate every single day, selling houses, leading teams, talking to clients. This is just the other component of it. And this other component doesn't happen unless the real estate transactions happen. And so I always try to tell people, like, under this model, whether it's EXP, Real, LPT, Epic now, right? And some of these other ones that are getting started, why not get rewarded multiple times for you doing the one thing that you want to do anyways, which is sell real estate? Like, it makes common sense. It makes sense to you and I, because we've been in it for, 4, 5, 6 years.
I think what's frustrating is when we know what it's done for us. I know what's done for me. I have a good idea of what it's done for you and some of the people in your organization. And it's like, I want to share that with people, but I don't want to be that, let's call it commission breath, where it's like, people know that if you decide to join our organization and name me as a sponsor, I will probably make some money. But that small amount of money is not worth me compromising my integrity and encouraging someone to do something that wouldn't be a good fit for them. So sometimes, the conversation, I don't know, you know that it would be a really good fit for that particular individual, but they're like, I'm completely happy. I don't want to even think about it.
Yeah.
And you feel bad. It's just like the person that hangs up on you on the phone because you call them because you can help them sell their house, but you're the third person that called them. So they just hang up on you. And you're like, man, I know I could have been the best agent to help them. And they hung up on me. And I wanted to have a better conversation with people, is that I care about them as individuals. I want to explore what is best for them. And if what's best for them is a big red balloon, in front of their office, that's fine, because they've had the information about what the other options are in the marketplace. So I want to have the conversation with people that want more from than what they currently have. Yeah. But they're willing to work for it. I mean, we've also talked to people that say, hey, I sold 3 houses last year. I'm going to move to a different brokerage because they're going to help me sell more houses. If you only sold 3 houses, what's your level of commitment to your business, your professionalism?
Right. Andrew, last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you could give one piece of advice to our audience that, maybe either you receive or that you give, to other agents, if they ask you regarding, real estate, selling houses, luxury, what would that be?
Mm-hmm. It's actually going to be more basic than that. It is the importance of referrals. But in this instance, what I mean by that is referrals from people that your clients don't know and you don't know. You need to, if you're selling real estate, do everything you possibly can to get an online review from every single transaction that you're ever involved in. And then that starts to build your portfolio. For me, a lot of my reviews are on Zillow. Some people build them out on realtor.com. Some people build them out in other venues. But what that does is it provides social proof that when you go to a listing appointment, I mean, you don't be confused with the fact that if you have failed to do that, your clients are going to look you up and they're going to say, oh, he only has 3 reviews. So it's hard to build them in the beginning, but part of it's the early conversation when you meet someone and you're talking with them. You say, hey, I want you to have a great experience. And at the very end of the experience, after everything's done, I'm going to send you a link for an online review. And you have that conversation 3 or 4 times before the closing, because if you wait to have that conversation to the closing, you haven't set the expectation that you're going to ask for that. So set the expectation early and ask for it, because over the course of time, that online review collection is going to bring you business. This month, I got a call from someone. It was a $1.4 million buyer. And I said, how did you find me? They basically wanted me to go write an offer. They already knew what they wanted to buy. They wanted me to go write an offer for them. I spent like 6 hours total with this client. Where did you find me? I read your Google review. That's my advice.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those that are watching the podcast, on YouTube or on Facebook, if you're a real estate agent and you want to connect with Andrew, talk to him about luxury, his business, how he built it, real, whatever the case may be, his phone number's down below. If you're a buyer, a seller, and you want to connect with Andrew to get your property sold or to help you buy a house, make sure you guys reach out to him. His phone number's down below. Andrew, for those that are maybe listening in on the audio version, what is the best way for someone to connect with you?
The best way is text or email or direct message. So my phone number is 614-323-1249. And of course, you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of those different platforms. I also have built a pretty big collection of people on LinkedIn because it's a professional network. I think I have probably 9,000 or 10,000 relationships on there. So I would recommend building that out as well for people that are just getting in the business.
Andrew, thanks so much for your time today and sharing your story, your journey. I know, we went back several years, from the beginning days of you and I being at Cutler and just following each other's journey. And, now, bringing two business models, two brokerage models to Central Ohio. I just appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us today. And obviously, I always love connecting with you and catching up on what's happening in your world and so forth. So thanks again so much for today. And we'll get connected again here in the near future.
My pleasure. Look forward to it.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Great.